It's 8 a.m. I've been up again early, doing calls and emails. Um, Talking to a friend of mine right now in New York, and she's. The thing about getting older, I think we can all agree, is that making new friends is tough. Um, it's difficult for married couples, for example, because you're married, you maybe have kids. And so your circle is pretty much other parents or family members or people at work, right? But for people who are single in their 40s who are not married, or obviously not married, single, but who don't have kids either, like myself, um, it's a really interesting landscape of navigating adult friendships. You get to a point, I think we can all agree, maybe, where you kind of get exhausted by people, but you still want to meet people. And you have your own interests, and like, for example, I love going to the gym. That's a me time thing. That's the one place where I could actually meet people. But I don't want to because that's me time. I personally don't like making friendships at the gym because I don't want them to leave the gym. I want my gym time to be my sacred time for me and only me, where I get to focus on my body, my breathing. It's like a form of meditation in a weird way. And I believe that, I'm sure there's people out there that feel the same way. So when I see videos on social media about people interacting and having a crew and everything, I admire that greatly. I love camaraderie. I love having the usual people that you see and saying hey and maybe catching up on life, and that's just kind of like your point of contact in this third place, and it doesn't go beyond that. But I do admire people who have a crew that they just kind of like live life with, and like it transmutes to other places, but I don't want that for myself. I'm never going to want that for myself because, again, I'm selfishly, selfishly the gym is for me. And I'm sure everybody has that. Like, if you have a space, if you live alone, your home is your sanctuary in some way. Or if you go to a cafe to read and you don't really want to talk to anybody and you just kind of want to sit there and read and be around people, or in a library, for example, I think those are like, that relationship with yourself is so important. But then you're like, okay, so I go to all these places, I do all these things. Should I try to meet people? Should I try to interact? How do I navigate this? Because the friendships that you've had, for example, for maybe 5 years, a decade or more, they change, right? We all have our different life paths, and your friends get married, your friends get into a relationship, or maybe they just have a kid and priorities change. They move for a job. They move to a job for another country. They move to another country, period. I mean, I was talking to one of my colleagues in Germany, and she's like, you spend a lot of time alone, don't you? I'm like, yeah, I mean, outside of my parents, like, I don't really see my friends in LA. We just have different lives. I do make time to see them once in a while whenever I'm in town, but not really. I work out, I see my parents, and I'm kind of just working on my business. I don't leave my hole in this world. And strangely, I'm okay with that. But I do miss my friends. I miss my friends in New York. I miss my friends in Europe. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you find yourself in that position, it's totally normal. It's okay. If there's anything that I've learned is that, a life goes in phases. Sometimes we are surrounded by people, and we're celebrating all the small things, and there are festivities and nights out at the bar and gatherings at friends' houses, and just kind of this amazing, beautiful flow of life that happens. But then there's moments in your life where it's silent and you're in hermit mode, and you kind of just go through a roll call of your life, and of all the things that you do and all the people that you see, and you're like, what's making me happy? Where does my heart beat a little bit stronger than the other? Where do I want to actually be? And how do I set my life up to be there once I kind of realize where I want to be? That's a difficult place to be in, because you kind of force yourself into this solitude, and you don't mind it. You don't mind the silence, because the voices in your head are so loud that they take up all of your energy. And then by the end of the day, you just can't fathom being around people, because you don't know how to show up as whoever it is that you're becoming. It's disorienting, and it can be a little bit depressing sometimes. But from what I recall, like, when you get through to the other side of that, and you get excited to be around people again, and you want to see people again, and make that effort, and show the world who you are in a weird way, that's when things kind of start to unravel, and then you'll find yourself in places and getting swept up in the magic of life again, and the cycle repeats itself. And it's important to just kind of take a moment to realize that that's just what happens in life. We all go through these cycles of, whether you're introverted or extroverted, we're all social beings to some extent. And we will have our moments of life where we're either completely alone and maybe see like very, very only our nuclear people. And then there's going to be moments where we naturally just kind of get swept up in things happening, and we seek adventure, and then adventure finds us, and our lives expand in ways that we could have never even predicted. And the difference is that you are willing to accept that adventure and that unknown. And your timing is always perfect. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, we may leave people behind, or we may lose people because maybe sometimes they don't understand what we're going through, or life takes them away from us, or circumstance. Sometimes we show up as people that we didn't think that. Sometimes we show up to people and we're not ourselves, and that creates a chasm in our friendship, in our relationship, and then we lose them that way. All sorts of things can happen, but in that time, other friendships and relationships come up, or are heightened or highlighted, that remind us that we're on this path, and that it's okay, and we're not alone, and that it's just all gonna work out somehow, even if it doesn't make sense. So if you haven't made new friends yet, perhaps you're not ready to. Because I believe Or if you haven't found the love that you're looking for, like romantic love, let's say, perhaps you're just not ready to, and that's okay. Everything has its time, and it's totally normal to look at other people and think, wow, I really want that. But there's other times you got to admit where you've looked at other people and you're like, wow, that looks really nice. I really don't want that in my life right now. And believe me, from personal experience, I have definitely been there. And I know several of my friends who are currently going through that right now, where they're actually dipping their toe back into dating. And they're like, oh, I don't know that I want this. I don't know that I'm ready for the anxiety of wondering if they're going to call, or wondering if they're, going to like me back. I don't know if I'm ready for the song and dance yet. And I'm like, just see where it goes. You gotta dip your toe in eventually, one day or another. And if it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right. And if it does, you'll keep going. So just stop trying to predict everything and just try to enjoy being in the now and seeing how it feels in the moment and every moment that you are going through this. So yeah, you got to be patient with yourself more than anything else. I think everybody wants everything now. Yeah, sure, life can feel very, very short sometimes. But the way we slow it down is by really just kind of being in these little tiny moments with each other, and with ourselves. And taking pictures and writing in a journal. Like, I know people think journaling is probably, some people I'm sure think journaling is really cheesy because everybody talks about it so much. But there's journals that I have from, 2-3 years ago where I wrote down memories and feelings, and it just takes me back. It takes me back to that. It's so crazy. I can be completely non-descriptive in that, oh, I feel sad today because so-and-so said this or this happened. And even though it's just a very simple sentence, I can recall that memory so quickly, and I can just find myself in those feelings again in that moment. And I can, maybe because I have a sort of photographic memory, I can visualize exactly what that moment felt like, what that person felt like, what I felt like, sometimes what even I was wearing. And that's how we slow down life a little bit. And if you haven't started doing that, I think you should. And sure, maybe nobody will read your journal when you're gone one day. But that doesn't matter. You're not doing it for them. You're doing it for yourself. I hope I haven't thrown away some of my journals. I know I have in the past, but the ones that I have now, I don't think I'll ever get rid of them. Because even though I don't check them regularly at all, sometimes you come across them years later and you're like, wow, I went through that. Or I remember that moment, and it was one of the best moments of my life at that point. How great was that? That was the turning point of X, Y, and Z. It's like replaying one of those 8mm film rolls, that they did back in the day, but in your brain. Ugh. That's how you romanticize life. That's how I romanticize life. So, if you don't, maybe that'll inspire you to look at things a little bit differently. But if you do, then you're not alone. A lot of us share very similar experiences, and I think that there's a lot of beauty in that. That we're all a lot alike, a lot more alike than we think, if we're not distracted by the fears surrounding politics and all that stuff. So, anyways, thanks for ruminating, cogitating with me this morning. And I hope you have a good day. And I will be back probably end of this week with, I'm hoping, some lovely updates. Cheers.